enjoy a seat at the table and good company, where great conversations and meaningful discussions happen.
Welcome to And Good Company. I'm Sara, FIEDELHOLTZ, a conversationalist. We all know that what makes a great dinner party isn't really the food. It's the people sitting around the table having lively discussions and debates and conversations. And I'm pleased to have at this table for a conversation Patti Hays, who is the CEO of the AWS, which is the Anthony Wayne.
Oh.
No, it's just AWS now?
AWS Foundation.
Okay. The AWS Foundation, and a co-founder of AVOW, which stands for Advancing Voices of Women. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Sara.
So before we dive into all of the incredible things you're doing in the community, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your background and sort of how you got to where you are. And you started actually as a nurse, correct?
Once a nurse, always a nurse. I send my $50 in every 2 years, and I get to keep saying I'm a nurse.
And then from there, you went on, you worked at, tell me a little bit about your background, and you worked at Lutheran.
Before I grew up in Pittsburgh and lived in West Virginia, South Carolina, Louisiana, have had a variety of experiences, but moved to Fort Wayne in 1990, starting first with building the Heart Center Fitness Club and doing all the wellness programming for that group of cardiologists, and then moved over to Lutheran and worked there for 20 years in administrative positions, helping to grow the network.
Mm-hmm. And then you went into doing, you were like a consultant, right?
True.
You worked for helping people with their strategic growth and development. And
Correct.
And then in 2015, you were appointed the CEO of AWS, correct?
And I had been with the original organization, Anthony Wayne Services, and part of the board of AWS Foundation since its inception in 2012. So moving into the CEO position after that.
And so, and just so that we get it, so that we're clear, so the AWS Foundation, it's a over $100 million foundation where its mission is to provide initiatives, grant-making activities, and community partnerships that address the needs of children and adults with disabilities and special needs. Correct?
Right. We work to help all individuals, children and adults with enduring intellectual, developmental, and physical disabilities live as independently as possible, which kind of translates into how do we have the most inclusive Northeast Indiana that we can have.
Right. And then you also, you mentioned that you feel that you have made life-saving and life-changing decisions that have impacted many lives. What kinds of decisions or things that you have done that you've felt that you've really been able to make and have impact and change?
Yeah, I hope when you say you've made these, that is the foundation, because it's the board of the foundation that gives us the assets that we have. Because for a person with a disability who has limited opportunity to interact in the community, and we've all felt a little bit about that lately with COVID.
Right.
You know, that thought of isolation and the restlessness. Imagine being a person with a disability and not being able to be an active part of the community. So the foundation, through its grants, have helped with early diagnosis, but through supporting school activities, employment, housing, engagement with the arts,
right,
housing, the importance of transportation. We've all sampled just a little bit of that during COVID, and that problem that comes with isolation.
Right, and then in your work with AVOW, that's really to help women recognize their talents and their voice, and to get more involved on the civic level with running for office or being on boards and engaging with the community, correct? Right.
It was that realization that only 20% of elected offices in the state are held by women, and a lot of those are school board. Wanting to say what are the barriers for that, and starting with just understanding your opinion counts. Mm-hmm. Too often we were encountering women who would say, I can't write a letter to the editor, I can't do that. my opinion's not that important. I'm not an expert. Versus men would go, I got an opinion on that, and easily write 600 words, and coaxing that out of women.
And the funny thing is so when I was doing my little reconnaissance on you, and I started to think about what's the connection between the two. What I realized is, first of all, you have chosen to focus on very difficult issues and creating change in beliefs that are systemic and institutional in our society, which is how people with disabilities are viewed and treated, and also how women are viewed and treated. So you're really, you are really pushing to challenge people and the community to think differently. And so one of the things that I was thinking about is how is that impacted, or what you think about leadership in those roles?
Well, you know, a good leader is someone who brings the best out in another individual. So to some extent, I think AWS Foundation is trying to say your life, your abilities, whatever they are, has worth. Let's bring that out, because it adds to the fabric of our community. And the same for women. If I can help as an organization bring out the skills that you have, encourage business, encourage sharing your opinions.
And
sure.
I thought what was also interesting is if you think about some of the things that you hear from the clients that you serve through AWS are probably the same things that you hear from women. I can't do that. I don't have the skills. I, not experienced enough. I'm not good enough. It's sort of like you're taking really what I always like is you're taking the word when they say it's impossible to making it I'm possible. And so I also thought that was really interesting that you're really able to use a lot of those skills that you've perfected in both, jobs, and really I was seeing the connection between the two.
People with disabilities, women, are two populations that have been, and to some extent continue to be, marginalized. And some of it's giving permission and empowering both to recognize there's a role.
And I thought that I read about your idea of why you like lefties, people who are left-handed. Are you left-handed?
I am not, but my grandmother was left-handed.
Yes. And you said how when she went to school, they tied her left hand, and that they did with my mother.
Oh, really?
Well.
Yeah.
But
I love to hire left-handed people because I tell the story sitting at a chef's table in a restaurant once where you can watch them do all the food prep, and realizing that one of the chefs there had one hand. And I was mesmerized that he continued turning out courses, as did the other chefs behind the bar. But he had figured out ways to do it. And same with a left-handed individual. You have to be able to problem solve. The world, I worked with a surgeon who is left-handed, and surgical equipment is made for right-handed people. So either you figure out how to do it right-handed, or you create your own tools, but they're good problem solvers.
And you said they're creative.
They are creative.
And actually my sister is left-handed.
So you agree,
no,
artistic,
and
often
yes,
you find.
And the funniest thing is, and like Oprah Winfrey and Barack Obama are all they're southpaws. I always wanted to be left-handed because I always thought that the most creative and talented people were left-handed. But I thought that was such an insight into thinking about as a leader, and also what you look for in people that you want to work with, or even looking into for women through AVOW, that to get them, to encourage them to see something different in themselves. And I thought that was just such an interesting, that most people wouldn't think about. But I thought you had a really interesting take on it.
And I've been taught to try and not use the word disability, but instead to say differing abilities. We all have abilities.
Right.
If you've ever seen me throw a baseball, I've got a disability.
Right.
My ability is very different.
I wanted to be like an architect, but I realized I cannot draw a straight line with a ruler, nor can I even cut wrapping paper straight, because I have an astigmatism and I just can't. So, I found a different way to do it.
You
But
worked
I think
around
you're
it.
right. That's why I think it's my whole idea of it's impossible to I'm possible. It's turning that negative into a positive. But I think that what I really liked about this whole thing with you with lefties was that it really was very insightful into how you think and how you encourage and think about the people around you. And it may not be like the things that you're looking at may not be the traditional, like looking at their resume, or it's more about their life experiences and how they've adapted and adjusted. So I really thought that was interesting.
But left-handed people used to be seen as evil. Your left hand's the dirty hand, and a variety of bad luck. So it's overcoming flaws in thinking and untruths.
And so one of the things that I think that in both roles, so we're going back and forth
Okay.
a bit, but then we will divide them up, is you talk about this idea of that you're trying to deal with the issue of confirmation bias, and how we are more attracted to those who are similar, or we search out people who are like ourselves. Can you talk a little bit about that and why that is, and how with people who work, when you see people who don't have the same abilities or capabilities, or with men and women, how that plays out?
Well, we do surround ourselves because we feel more comfortable, and that is an unconscious process. I like going to a female middle-aged physician. I feel like that person understands me. If you look at my phone, it's filled with white, college-educated women. We all have that comfort area, and some of it is because there may be similarities in thoughts and practices. And conversely, does that mean I avoid those who are not that way? And it's one of the challenges we've seen with AVOW with civil conversations. How do I understand another point of view? Or how am I quick not to judge a point of view different than my own if I'm never around anyone other that isn't like myself?
Right.
So we have to challenge ourselves and find.
Let's take a step back and explain what are civil conversations and what those are that AVOW is doing.
Right. The process is really, really simple. It is that I sit and listen. I don't interrupt. I let you finish your idea. I may even nod a little in the course of my listening. I maintain eye contact. I'm not multitasking. I'm truly engaged with the idea of not in my head is, oh, I know what I'm going to say to that.
Right.
I got a good one coming back. But that I'm truly attempting to understand empathically your perspective, knowing that you'll do the same for me. In a group, we all share equally in that opportunity to give our opinion. When there is that empathy, when there is that civility and understanding, let me clarify that. Did I hear you say? Then it's one step closer to trying to find a compromise, trying to find where we can get some common ground. We had a great civil conversation on guns and had, Paul Helmke was there and his experience with the Brady Commission, but we also had a fair number of NRA members, and you would have thought, how do we bring these two disparate groups of women together with opinions on both sides? But as we sat and listened and talked, we could find some common ground. Now, it was a starting point of guns should be stored safely. People need to be educated on the use. Did we tackle licensure, gun control? Not in the course of an hour and a half, but we were able to find some common ground, and that's where you start with civility and that ability to move forward.
And isn't that in reality how AVOW started? Was this idea of wanting to have civil conversations and an outgrowth of, I guess, the other three women that you started. Now, were you all friends? Because I want to say with your other friends, or did you know each other before?
Differing levels.
Okay.
Absolutely. Rachel Tobin Smith, Faith Van Gilder, Marilyn Moran Townsend, and myself. Some of us knew each other better. Some only knew each other superficially. But we each brought one or the other in and said, let's start with this core group, knowing that in January of 2017, that thought of how do we get more women running for office, and backing on up saying, first we need to get women comfortable with having their opinion heard.
Right.
Journal Gazette stepped up, helped us with those Sunday guest editorials. Then it was also a comfort and skill set on conflict. And then also the Campaign Institute.
Right.
So those three kind of, I don't know which came first, chicken or the egg, but they built on each other. With that end point of encouraging women to have that voice in the public square.
Right. So let's unpack it a little bit, because there's a lot in AVOW that I think is really amazing and interesting. But from what I understand, it was when you looked at the federal election in 2016, and you felt that there wasn't as much civility in the in the election, in the campaign process.
In the campaign process,
and
sure.
so it was sort of that you all, I guess, each of you in your own worlds were sort of thinking about this, because you're also all very different in terms of your whatever your own political beliefs are
Absolutely.
and background. And the important thing is that AVOW is nonpartisan. So let's just, because getting women to run for office, it's not a party-oriented
Correct.
platform. But so then I think you were all having your own experience, and then you and I believe Marilyn, right, went to the women's march in Washington, right?
Faith,
Faith.
Rachel,
okay.
and I.
Oh, okay.
Faith and I went as part of a group out from Fort Wayne.
Right.
Rachel went because her daughter lived nearby, and it was an experience she shared with her daughter. I met my niece who lived in D.C. My twin sister came from Atlanta. We kind of put together a group, and so we saw it from differing perspectives, yes.
And then you all thought and started to talk about the idea of how do you...
So now what?
Right, and how do you make it like, okay, so, and this is the big thing I always have is, okay, you get all this rah-rah, this cheerleading, we all feel good, kumbaya, and then everybody disperses and goes back, and what's the residual, effect and change?
Absolutely.
And so then the four of you decided, tell me what that was like to create AVOW.
Well, just what I've said, that we each kind of said, where's your strength? What do you want to put on the table? Pick up your passion. Marilyn's expertise with public communication and her links with Jill Long and Mayor Helmke, and bringing those forces to the table. She was a natural to kind of spearhead the Campaign Institute, though we all work collaboratively,
right.
But we're trading off the leadership depending on what the strengths were. Yeah.
So let's talk about the campaign school and the program. Tell me about what that is, and because you just finished your third cohort, right?
Correct.
So explain to me a little bit about how it works and who goes and what the purpose of it is.
We get wonderful scholarships from the community so that women can step forward as potential candidates. Ideally, we hope they have something in mind, as well as their campaign manager. And over a very intense weekend, they have the opportunity to learn from local experts as well as nationally known experts. We have people come from Sally's List in Oklahoma, who has a very successful program encouraging women and helping women be successful in running for office. Jill Long comes back, and Jill's I'll put a plug in for her new book that's out on ethics and talks with us about ethics. Patty Rousseau brings down the house with Yale School for Women. Yeah.
And you really address, the idea of if you want to run or get into serve public office, how to do it, right? I mean, it's really, you get down into the stuff like campaign finance and how to create a campaign statement.
Right, and as much as you can over a weekend. Andy Downs does some great steps. It's not enough, but it is some foundation work. Right. And then we offer our help for women going forward then after that, if they can refine what they want to do and how can we help them continue on the path after that. And have seen successful women. Everything from a fair number of women made it as delegates for conventions that didn't happen, but elected delegates right. nonetheless, right. To local, county, city.
Like Danita Washington, right? That she...
as a Wayne Township trustee, absolutely, right. is a graduate of the program. Michelle Chambers is a graduate of the
because we should point out that, and we now unpack as we're talking about this, the issues with women in office. I mean, Fort Wayne has not had a woman mayor, and then for
one day we had a woman mayor for one day.
Okay.
Yes.
And then for an extended period of time, we did not have a woman on the city council. Now we have two, and they are,
If we had every woman who has ever been on city council serve at the same time, we still would not have half of city council, or the majority of city council.
And you actually ran.
I did.
For city council.
I did.
What I thought was so interesting was that...
Oh, Sarah, you know more about me than I do.
that you won, obviously, the primary, and that was a pretty good, margin. I mean, I was surprised to see the number of people that actually went out to vote, but this is, to me, was the epitome of why people need to get out and vote. And I feel like if women would have voted, because you only lost by 309 votes.
Not bad for a nurse who's never run.
And I've got to believe in the 4th district that women are 51% of the population in general. We are 51% of the population in the state. You've got to believe that if 309 more women would have gotten out there, and to me it was a perfect example of why you have to vote. Because think about it, 309 votes. I mean, that's not, this significant hurdle.
No. But I went after men and women's votes, and women need to vote.
No, absolutely. But I just meant in that small number.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're going to be for city council, but it's also, you've said that women issues are people's issues. So I'm not saying that you're only.
Okay.
I was just saying if 309 more women, which is partly what this whole idea of being able to galvanize women, because if we are 51% of the population, then you've got to believe that we should be represented 51%.
Absolutely.
And we're not.
And some of the other challenges, particularly for these local elections, is the younger voter. Until you own a house, you may not really care about city council. You're not paying significant taxes. The road doesn't run in front of the house that you own. It's your landlord who has to deal with trash issues, less you.
Right.
And so, but there are a lot of other issues city council weighs in on that influence you even if you don't own a home. But that's what I find is also that need of getting young people involved. And we'll see that in November's election. The younger voter has that capability to really sway the outcome in November.
And I mean, I think that one of the things that I think that with younger voters, it's also educating them on how things work. Like I didn't, Zach Benedict pointed it out to me about the whole idea of zoning and how zoning is so important in housing equity and what can be built where and how that then helps to increase property values. And and you would never think the people, city council and the zoning commissions and the people that are appointed to these various commissions, that they're the ones who make these decisions. So I think it's sort of like getting them to see the ripples of
Sure.
how things are impacted.
And that's one of the other newer initiatives with AVOW is, you teed that one up so nice for me, Sarah. I need to pick that one up and carry, is encouraging women to step up to serve on boards and commissions. Do I learn more about zoning? Can I learn more about the way the government works by being involved? We still have a fair number of city, county, and state boards and commissions that are heavily populated by males.
Yeah.
And we need greater diversity both with minorities as well as with women to occupy those boards and commissions so that our voices are heard.
Well, so we're talking about the profiles of public service. And
Correct.
you just launched that in August.
We did.
So you started with profiles of 48 women.
I think we're up to 56.
And are
We keep
those-
growing.
Are those women who are already participating?
No.
No. Those are women who that are putting their name in that ring, in that sort of their name in the ring to be
Sure.
to be considered.
There are some, like myself, who's already on Board of Health, who
Right.
has roles but maybe are willing to do more. And then those who are just saying, I'm ready to get
Right.
started. And how do I step up and do that?
Because I also think, and Nancy Stewart, who
Mm-hmm.
is, the chairman of the Public Arts Commission, was
Correct.
on, and she and I talked a little bit about this idea of how do we get more younger people involved and engaged, and sort of getting them to see how they can be on a board, or and then sort of having some of the what I like to call the doyens, sort of, they need to sort of mentor and then sort of move, more into an advisory role so that we can get more people on boards and that boards can reflect who they try to serve.
Right.
So, I mean, is that part of also about, because when you look at the 48 that you started with, I mean, these are women that, any woman would want to meet, just as terms of being a mentor and advisor, or how to navigate their career and things like that. So I mean, they are pretty the mighty powerhouses. But is that part of it also, that mentorship and education? And we had Cheryl Taylor on. I talked to her, and even my own sense of what I would have to do if I was on a board. I always thought it was either I had to be able to give a lot of money, or I had to be able to raise a lot of money. And that's always why I've sort of stepped back, because I don't feel comfortable in that role, which is probably why I think a lot of women probably also don't want to campaign, because there's that sensitive issue of asking for money, and but also that I just thought, I couldn't be on a board because I can't write that check to sort of help the organization. And so I think it's those kind of things, and I fairly think that I'm pretty, educated and engaged and knowledgeable, but I think you do have these sort of ideas and stereotypes.
Yeah. And there are different ways to serve on boards. It may be through your employer that you have that opportunity to bring dollars to the table. So that's why you'll see people from major corporations and employers sitting on boards. It may be the introductions that you can bring through your network
Right.
of friends, families, neighbors. And then it's also, it may be time. A lot of boards welcome workhorses, that there's a lot of volunteer work that needs to happen. Women who come to AVOW events will have that chance to meet women, to have that networking, mentoring opportunity, but there's also Weil and I, Leadership Fort Wayne, lots of opportunities for women just to step forward and say, how can I get more involved? And I would encourage any woman listening, give a call.
Right.
I called a couple of people when I moved to town and just said, people told me I needed to meet you. Who doesn't like to hear
Right.
that?
So what made you decide to run for city council?
It was kind of a, if not you, then who, Patti?
Okay.
And can I learn enough to add to learning for other people. I can help coach a little bit better if I've been through
I
it
was going to ask you.
myself.
Yeah. So, and also you talked about that what it was like to run a campaign for a woman as a woman in the 21st century. What was that like? What did you learn? What are the things that you sort of the big ahas?
You got to be able to raise money, and so that's feeling comfortable that you can just sell yourself. It's like, you know me. How long have we worked together? You know I'm going to get that done. And finding that common ground. It is really important to build trust in a quick fashion. And some of that I found, my nursing background really did help. When you walk in and a patient is in pain, is afraid, not knowing, the nurse is the person who puts their mind at ease, says, I've got this. So as I'm knocking on a door, it's how do I quickly engage? If I only get 5 minutes on their doorstep, how do I build trust and confidence that I will represent them? So you bring the experiences that you have and head forward. I found I had to spend a lot of time explaining what City Council did.
Right.
That people wanted to talk with me about schools.
Right.
And it was like,
Right.
it's a really big issue, but City Council is not responsible.
Right.
Yeah, for those situations, yeah.
But I think that also sort of the type of positions that typically women would think about running for are the ones that are more stereotypical, like school board, for instance, that they think are more.
And that's really important.
Right.
If that's where you're comfortable, start there.
Right.
If it is just, and I said just, I bite my tongue. If it is to step forward and serve your homeowners association, your PTA, start there.
Right.
And you build skills, you build relationships that are going to carry you to the next one and to the next one and to the next one.
And so, in thinking about this and your role so I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. So if you don't want to answer, that's fine. But when I interviewed the mayor at the end of 2019, and I sort of talked to him about, because this is his last term, about who's on the bench, like who are you cultivating to be, who are going to be the next leaders?
Yes.
And so, and he admitted that they don't necessarily have a very good lineup of, people who are going to step up and possibly run. And so I was thinking, and because we've only had a female mayor for one day, so in 2023, is that something you would think about? I mean, did you like the process of it? Do you think is that something you would ever consider?
I enjoyed the process, absolutely. City Council was a lot of work. It was every single day. At this point, I've got a big commitment to AWS Foundation and what we're doing with that. And I'll continue to support candidates. We're still 3 years away.
It also brings up this issue about women waiting to be asked. So talk about that a little bit, about that issue that women face as to why they won't step up or maybe run for office or do certain things.
And women need to be asked multiple times before they will say, okay. And it's not just running for office. It's when a job is posted at work and there's 7 requirements for the job, a woman will go down through and say, oh, I don't know how to do that, so they won't apply, versus a man will look and say, I can do 2 of the 7, count me in.
The men, the study is that men, if they can do 50% of the job, they apply. Women wait till 100. If they can't do 100% of the job, they're not going to apply.
Absolutely.
But I mean, it is inherent, because when I was thinking about this of empowering women and the idea of why they wait to unless they're asked, is that built into our culture. I mean, women have to, wait to be asked for the prom, for a date, to get married. I mean, we are waiting to be asked. So I think, how does AVOW sort of try to turn that? And
don't you think that's changing, though, Sarah? You are seeing, and for me, absolutely what you're defining is the way it was growing up. But for today's younger women, you are seeing women stepping up. And who knows the transition, and let's go ahead and keep empowering them.
Right.
That don't wait.
Right.
Don't wait to be asked.
I think that women are absolutely more confident in making decisions. Like, I mean, we're at a time where if they are even getting married, I mean, there are lots of people who are not getting married, and they are choosing to get married later, or people who are deciding not to have children. So they are making decisions for themselves, but there's still that, we haven't gotten to the parody of Sadie Hawkins' day, where
that one day you're allowed,
right,
yeah,
except for that day. So,
yes.
And I think that another issue that's really about this whole gender parity is also the pay gap is a very big issue. And one of the things that I was amazed in my research here to find out is that in the current White House, the women White House staffers earn 69 cents for every dollar paid to male staffers. That is even less. That's 33% less than the national average of the pay gap of women earn 82 cents to the dollar. So I mean,
Indiana's less than 82, but
right.
not quite 69.
Okay.
So, absolutely, and that's just a good place to start for women, is to say,
right.
Let's push to have salaries be transparent.
Right, because they say that's the first thing. And then, so obviously, the election's coming up, and, obviously there are issues getting people to vote. And are you feeling more positive because of the fact that we are seeing a woman, run again for vice president? And do you think that will create, more opportunity or change if it turns out that she's elected?
Well, I think it looks less foreign to have Senator Harris running for vice president, because Secretary of State Clinton ran for president. With each occurrence,
right.
it is less and less
right.
foreign. I have a friend whose daughter was devastated that Secretary of State Clinton didn't win, and the family went and did a trip to Disney World, and as this young girl sat there in the Hall of Presidents and looked across the stage, she turned to her mother and said, "You mean there's never been a woman?" She just thought Secretary Clinton
right.
didn't win,
right.
and it never occurred to her that there hadn't been a woman. So for her, it's not going to be a change. For me, it is exciting to see, because it is foreign to who I have seen as role models.
Right.
Sure.
And do you think that with, we talked about with the idea that people who have differences and the challenges that they face, that we've all sort of experienced that during this time of COVID-19. And do you think, though, that it's also really also brought to the attention a lot of the issues and things that impact women that have been, exacerbated because of COVID-19? Like the majority of, two-parent households, that the one who has to stay home or give up their job because the kids can't go to school is usually the mother. 2/3 of the types of jobs women have are ones that can easily be eliminated, or they are essential workers.
Oh, there's research showing that COVID is going to only perpetuate the pay gap. That women, because they are then stepping back and staying, it's going to spread that even more. Men are there, as their careers are continuing to advance during the past 9 months, and likely 9 months to a year going forward, is going to contribute to dropping that difference.
And so in your civil conversations that you have, I mean, you're not afraid to address tough topics. Is that something that you are going to sort of look at, or even with AVOW, to try to push forward for people to recognize that? Because I don't want to see, we've sort of it's like, I feel like sometimes with women, we take 2 steps forward and then we take a step back, and then we take, and that's partly a lot of the issues. So
that's okay. We're still moving.
Right.
We're still
Okay.
progressing.
Okay, so you feel that
2 forward, 1 back is still, you're heading in the right direction. And
Right.
we're talking about it
Right.
now too.
And how do we deal, though, also with this issue that that women are taking a step back from their jobs or careers because of the caretaking at home with the kids, or even family members that they don't have the services that they did before COVID. But also with the idea that a lot of women, one of the issues of why they won't run for office is because they don't feel they have that work-life balance, let alone now having to put in also serving in public office, because in a lot of cases it's not, public office is an add-on. It's not a or situation.
Yeah, and we need to be really careful as women to not judge a woman for her choice. There were 3 girls in my family. One chose to have no children and had a full-time career. One was a stay-at-home and didn't work until the kids were older, and the middle child tried to do both. For that woman who chooses to step back to stay with their children because of COVID and do the homeschooling, how can I support you?
Right.
For the woman who says, I want to run for office and I have kids, the answer should be the same. How can I support you? They each have roles without judgment.
Which is what part of my own personal get on my soapbox is that I think that sometimes women are women's worst enemies, because even look at the ERA amendment, and we can't even become united as women, within ourselves. We pass the judgment between who stays at home and who works, instead of just saying we're all women and we're doing the best we can. And it's also why I think that even though we're 51% of the population, we can't come together. And I think it's because we don't necessarily really support each other and just really look, just like you talk about in those civil conversations, is look for the common ground. I mean, the common ground is we all want to be appreciated. We all want to be recognized and paid what we're worth. If we're raising kids, we all want them to grow up to be good adults. I mean, so why do you think there is such this difficulty for women to support and want to just be each other's champions?
I tend to take some of it back to the way we're socialized. I grew up prior Title IX, so I have no experience with competitive sports and understanding what it's like to be a team. More likely, young girls are singular activities. They don't understand being part of a group and what that means going forward. Boys routinely are thrown on teams. How do you work together? How do you advance each other? And I think it's going to change because we are seeing more and more. It's routine. Track, cross country, soccer, basketball. It is as active in the girls' locker room as it is in the boys' locker room in area high schools. That is going to make some significant changes for sure. We cheer each other on, and let's just keep making that progress. The other thing that's going to help change that is we are also seeing it okay for men to talk about work-life balances.
Right.
And background in healthcare, I was recruiting more and more physicians who were interested in 40-hour work weeks versus 20 years sooner. The question was, how fast can I become a partner? How many hours a week do I have to work? So we're also seeing those changes impacting both genders.
And so does it ever frustrate you that it's not moving faster, or, it's sort of, it's moving along and we are going in the right direction, but we're not going as quickly?
Again, I got to accept where you are. Where do you want it to go? And I'll support you along the way. And how do I find the barriers? If there are laws that are holding you back, then that's my obligation to step up and help take that law down so that you can move faster. And to that little girl who looked at the Hall of Presidents, to be sure that she sees a place on the stage for her if that's what she wants. Right. If that's what she wants, that's okay. I went into nursing. Being a physician was kind of a passing reference, but that's just a difference generationally.
Right.
We now see 50% of medical school students being female.
More so. Yeah.
Same thing with law school.
Absolutely. Across the board, women are exceeding men in graduate degrees and professional degrees.
Yeah.
Well, I think that your idea of really wanting to hold up and champion others really helps to demonstrate why you are so successful and able to do such great things for the community.
Thank you.
I want to thank you.
Kind words. Yeah.
Now, at the end of each And Good Company program, I ask guests the same 12 questions that French novelist Marcel Proust popularized from a Victorian parlor game. And Proust believed that by answering these questions, you'll reveal your true nature.
Oh, I read these in the back of Vanity Fair,
Yes,
and I don't
exactly.
always answer them myself.
Right,
Can I
yes.
skip them and come back to them?
No.
Oh, gosh.
So,
Okay.
what is your favorite word?
Empathy.
What is your least favorite word?
No.
What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Walking.
What turns you off creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Meetings.
What sound or noise do you love?
Music.
What sound or noise do you hate?
High-pitched voices.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Theater.
What profession would you not like to do?
This always makes for great radio when somebody is quiet.
No, that's okay. Remember, this isn't radio. It's also,
I know, too.
But, I want it to be-
Profession that I
would not
don't want. I've done so much through
I
my
know.
life.
Maybe your answer would be not having a profession?
I will take, sloth.
Sloth.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
What do you consider your greatest achievement? This is going to be another hard one for you.
Not at all. My
No?
3 kids.
Okay. Who, living or dead, would you most like to have a conversation with?
Albert Schweitzer.
Oh. Well, that brings back your nursing background. How would you like to die?
With plenty of notice.
If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
I thought you'd never get here.
Well, I'm glad that you finally got here and took the time to have a seat at the table with me. I really appreciate it, and so thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
And please join me again next time when you can again enjoy a seat at the table for great conversation and good company.